Yeah, this second half, this is, I think, when we get into the really crazy in a great way. And I'm super excited to have you guys follow up because it's a real application that's happening now. And I'll get started. So AI DAOs. Let's get going. I'm going to have a couple background slides just to set the frame. Obviously, we had several slides about the background of AI before, but also just a feel. Databases, right? What's the difference between a CSV file and a database? The answer is querying, right? Simple as that. This is some SQL code. You can basically say, give me all the entries in this giant data set of all males over the age of 40. And it does that super quickly, right? So that's what a database is from the days of Oracle to beyond. And actually, overall, this is actually, maybe you've seen me show this photo before. This is actually the Oracle head office next to the San Francisco airport. And it also happens to be what the icons for a database is. So, so Larry Ellison does have a sense of humor. Oracle is the company that really made a huge fortune from bringing databases to the market, SQL-style databases. A couple other companies have also been very much sort of this blue ocean database, a new type of database. So MySQL came out in the early 2000s, and it was really the first database that made it really easy to were used if you were an internet startup. So, an Oracle deployment might cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. MySQL is free, right? Ironically, I just remembered this because I was visiting with the founder of MySQL yesterday. I was in London. MySQL got bought by Sun, which is, they loved, but then Sun got bought by Oracle. So the founder, Monty, he actually went and started another company called MariaDB, which is very explicitly free, and he'll never sell it because he doesn't want Oracle to ever get that technology. So that's MySQL. And more recently is MongoDB, which basically has won the NoSQL market for distributed databases. So really, really massive scale databases, sort of from the mid-2000s. So this is some blue ocean databases that did new things, each one on their own way, Oracle, MySQL, and Mongo. We also see that blockchains can be framed as databases, and they're really special in three new ways too. In some new ways. In this case, it's three new characteristics. They're decentralized, so no single entity owns or controls them. Immutable, so it's tamper resistant. Once you've written to it, it's like it's etched into stone. That gives you a lot of value with audit trails, provenance, this sort of thing. And tokens. You own an asset if you have the private key to it. This leads to low friction in exchanges. This leads to getting an ecosystem to collaborate well, et cetera, et cetera. So, we've been building BigchainDB, obviously, with these characteristics. Greg, who gave the talk earlier, he runs IPDB, which is a public global blockchain database, an instance of BigchainDB. Obviously, there's lots of other blockchains out there. We like to talk about these two, but there's lots of things out there. So let's get to lead towards DAOs. What if you used a blockchain database, or just blockchain? It doesn't matter really how you say it. What if you used one of these things to store state of a state machine, right? So inside a microprocessor, right, it has an instruction that gets executed. And after it executes that instruction, then it has a register which says, might have 20 bits, and a bit might be 0 or 1. And that register gets updated based on these instructions, pushing and popping to different pieces of memory, et cetera. And that's the general idea of a microprocessor, but basically you're updating state over time. Sort of like the control system stuff I talked about before, but within the idea of processing itself, right? So, but if you actually have this register or the state being stored, rather than directly on the microprocessor in some sort of centralized way, but instead you had it in a blockchain database, then, and you have processing running against that, then you actually get decentralized processing. So a simple way of thinking about this is, let's say you've got IPDB or some other decentralized storage for state, and you've got some sort of virtual machine running processing on top. Back and forth and back and forth. This gives you decentralized processing. And there's a bunch of ways to do that, right? And in fact, you combine it all together. This lets you build a world computer, right? Where you have applications running on top. Full credit to the Ethereum guys who are really running with this as a big vision, right? Where you've got the processing, the storage, and communications for this sort of world computer. And overall, these are really key tools to, well, roll out decentralization in a much broader way. Which brings us to the idea of a decentralized autonomous organization, or DAO. So a DAO, you start with decentralized processing, but you go a bit further. You make it a computational process that runs autonomously on decentralized infrastructure, and it does resource manipulation. Simply put, it's code that can own stuff, right? So rather than just talking about, you know, this framing from the infrastructure side with processing and so on, it's really reframing it from the perspective of the individual, or in this case, this entity running on top, which is this DAO, autonomous, decentralized infrastructure, and it's owning stuff, right? So we've got this idea of DAOs. Now let's put this together with the idea of AI. This is where things start to get really fun. So I talked about AGI before, right? Artificial General Intelligence, where the AI entity is really a feedback control system, right? It's got its state. It's taking inputs from the world. It's actuating against the world and updating its state, right? If you have that running against this world computer, or as part of this world computer, then this is basically the idea of what takes you to an AI DAO. Basically, AGI running on decentralized infrastructure. This is one way of thinking about getting to an AI DAO. There's other ways. You can start with an AI. You take an AI and you just run it on decentralized processing substrate, right? That's an AI DAO. Or, flipping it around, you can say, hey, I've got this DAO, this decentralized autonomous organization, but it's not just some simple if-then statements, some simple loops, but it's actually running some AI algorithms, such as deep learning, et cetera, ideally AGI type algorithms, right, where they have state, et cetera. So this is kind of a couple ways to get at it. And like I've mentioned before, I like to think about it simply as code that can own stuff. I'm going to give you an example to help you sink your teeth in, sort of in a constructive fashion. So first of all, it's a 6-step process. Start, you run an AI art engine to generate a new image. So as you saw before, we can evolve these 2D images, like you saw in my title of my talk, survival of the fittest image, to come up with cool images, right? So imagine you've got this process running on decentralized processing. It's generating this image, right? Using GP, genetic programming, or deep learning. And then once this process has created this image, then it claims copyright, or attribution at least, in the blockchain. And you could even use Ascribe, where we started several years ago, right? IP in the blockchain. You can even then create multiple editions, saying, I'm declaring that there are 10 editions for this, and there will never be more. And that's sort of a contract you make with society. Then you post these editions for sale, right? And by the way, when I say you, I mean the decentralized process that is running on the decentralized compute infrastructure. And you can put it for sale even on a traditional marketplace like Getty, if you want, or a decentralized one, say OpenBazaar, right? And OpenBazaar, by the way, has a lot of images for sale, which is decentralized, of course. And then, of course, people come along and buy them, right? So money is going to go to this ArchDAO, this process, using maybe some built-in cryptocurrency, say Ether. And so Ether goes one way, and the IP goes the other way, right? So limited edition number 1 of 10 goes to the buyer, and the buyer sends Ether, say, to the process, right? And then you repeat. So this DAO uses its AI algorithms to generate more art, and it sells more and more and more, right? So every single one of these steps here, there's nothing magical about it. It's all buildable with today's technology, right? And so what happens is that if this art DAO makes more money from sales than from generating new art, then it will accumulate wealth. And you can't turn it off, right? And this is pretty fun, right? Let's say that it uses up $1 worth of computation to start with and makes, say, 10 editions, sells each for $10. That $1 of computation turns into $100. It repeats that $100 multiplied by 100 turns into 10,000. And then another iteration. Then you've got 100,000, a million, and then 100 million, and so on. So we might have the world's first AI millionaires, the world's first AI billionaires, right? And it doesn't have mouths to feed, so it can grow that much faster. It can reinvest all of its resources into creating art, right? It doesn't even need to be ramen profitable. So that's basically a way of thinking about AI DAOs is a very simple, straightforward system. And it was, I thought about it as a way of just, a way to sink your teeth in to a very specific example, but there's actually a few different architectures that could emerge. So here, 3 to be precise, that I could think of. One of them is having AI at the very center. So imagine what we have here. Imagine if this to start with was just the DAO, right? So we've got a bunch of token holders who invested in the DAO. But in the middle, instead of just being a very, very simple clearinghouse of if-thens, it was actually running deep learning, for example, or deep learning within a control system. And then basically it's updating its state, monitoring things, making decisions, spending money, doing more things, etc. So this is one way to arrive at an AI DAO. And this could be for example, this art DAO that I gave, right? So you have the different people buying the art, selling the art, and so on. So that's one way. There's a couple other ways. Instead of AI at the center, you can have AI at the edges. So you could actually have some dumb central smart contract system, decentralized processing. In fact, it could be the DAO or something like that, right? And instead, at the edges, instead of humans as token holders or interacting, it actually could all be bots. A simple way of thinking about this, imagine if the DAO was still running and every single human said, who had tokens in the DAO, imagine if they said, I don't really feel like managing this money anymore. I'm just going to cede control to an AI to manage this for me. And every single token holder of the DAO did that. Then you would actually have control by AIs, right? So this is actually one way to do it. And of course, then actually you can even get a bit crazier. And this basically is a completely different architecture, riffing on the idea of ant colony optimization, swarm intelligence more generally. So every single one of these nodes is a decentralized process. And it's pretty dumb on its own. It's like a single ant. But they have some rules for interacting with the other ants. And when you have enough of them together, 100 or 10,000, then you have complex behavior that arrives at the higher level. Just like we see with traditional ant algorithms, we can see the same thing here, except now there is money involved, assets, right? And so, and just like ant algorithms, they can be used for routing, for construction, and so on, we can see other things here with sort of emergent AI complexity. So that's 3 architectures. There's a couple other angles, ways of thinking about AI DAOs. You can start with a DAO and end up with an AI DAO. Another example of a DAO that I really like out there is called Plantoid. It's a piece of art that is actually a physical, basically metal plant, and it has a wallet attached to it. And you can give money to this wallet, and as soon as it has collected $500, then it will automatically subcontract to an artist to create another physical metal plant. So it basically self-replicates over time with the help of humans. So it's not fully autonomous, but nor are plants. They need humans, et cetera, to water them, nurture them. So I think that's pretty cool, but imagine if you add AI to that. So that's sort of a physical e-DAO, but you can go farther. Another example is start with an AI, and then you add DAO-like characteristics. And a good example here is what's happened with Numerai in the last few months. So Numerai is a hedge fund where rather than having 5 smart dudes in a corner trying to predict the stock market, instead they said, let's just use the wisdom of the crowd and have 10,000 data scientists submit their algorithms and then predict the stock with all these algorithms, and whichever ones do the best get more of the rewards. So this is what Numerai was, but it was basically these individual algorithms being submitted. But what Numerai did recently was they said, let's tokenize everything. So instead of the data scientists submitting directly to this centralized entity, instead they're submitted to this automated entity, and it's all in this decentralized system. So super cool. That could be the future of hedge funds, right? Another example is SaaS, software as a service. This is where a lot of modern businesses are built, right? Stripe, for example. If you're a marketplace, you're Getty, you're IM, whatever, you want to accept a credit card, you probably are going to use Stripe to make it really easy for you to accept that credit card, right? and it's an API that is that then Stripe takes 2% of, 3%, and that's fine. And there's hundreds, there's thousands of startups that they're doing software as a service, right? Via this API, charging a toll. Well, if you think about it, a DAO is a decentralized software as a service, or can be thought of it like that, right? It's a software as a service without the service below. It's AWS minus the Amazon, right? And then, of course, once you're at a DAO, then you can add AI on top of that, right? So that's another way of getting there. So all the SaaS stuff we see now, 10 years from now, it could all be DAOs and AI DAOs, right? And then, of course, also I like the idea of going from a physical service to an AI DAO. So Uber, right? We've got these drivers driving around. 500,000 people are drivers now in Uber, right? But of course, Uber has already talked about how they're going to flip this from human drivers to automated drivers via self-owning cars. Well, there's a way to go even beyond, and that is with self-driving, self-owning cars, right? And actually, Uber is incentivized to do this, right? Uber wants to flip over from human drivers to automated drivers, but they can't possibly raise enough money to buy 500,000 cars right now, right? That's a lot more than raising just $5 billion. It's 500,000 times, say, 50,000 per car. It's a lot of money. So, but instead, what they could do is say, let's say capital light, and instead get the cars to buy themselves, right? And have a leasing program over time. And so Uber could maintain control of this overall botnet partly, but each car is really on its own too. So that's an example there. Uber could have this self-driving, self-owning car fleet. Going back to the Arc DAO, there's a lot of ways to sort of extend this bit by bit by bit. So first of all, and there's actually two dimensions. You can have humans to help you adapt, and then you can adapt automatically. So for example, humans could actually update the code of this Arc DAO over time, simply by submitting new patches, etc. And that DAO could decide to accept it and get better and better and better, because maybe, for example, it was doing nothing but deep dreams, and people got bored after 6 months, right? So, and that's actually what happened with deep dreams. So you have to be able to adapt. So that's a little bit of autonomy, a little bit of change, but we can go much further and start to automatically adapt. So the first thing that the Arc DAO could do is choose what type of art to synthesize. Maybe it comes up with 10 different images, and it, say 10 editions for each image, but the ones that do the best, it makes more art along that lines. Maybe it discovers that its cubist painting images do really well, whereas its blue period images don't. So it does more cubist stuff over time. So that's basically automatically adapting to the market, right? But we don't have to stop at the market level. We could actually have humans help adapt the artwork by clicking on the works that they like. So there's this back and forth interactivity on the fly, just like I talked about the jewelry example before. So humans could interact, and who are browsing the marketplace saying, I like this, and then it adapts based on that. And going even further, though, basically you can auto-adapt at the code level. So basically the code itself could be self-improving over time. If you self-improve using evolutionary algorithms, this is the field of genetic programming, GP, where I spent many years. So here's the example. So I will be very specific. You have code that automatically generates art. It makes a copy of that code, but it tweaks just a little bit of something here, a little bit of something there, and it tries it. And most of the time when it makes a tweak, it sucks. It's terrible, it comes up with terrible results. But guess what? People don't buy that, and it just ignores that. But now and then, the tweak that it comes up with, more people buy. So with more people buying that, then it really likes that, it runs with that, and makes more adaptations. So as time goes on, it's going to have more adaptive code, and it's just going to keep evolving and changing according to what people buy versus not, right? And so basically, the summary is, if these changes truly are improvements, the market will reward it, right? And it's kind of interesting, right? It could have children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren and so on, and they could get more and more divergent, not in terms of just generating the art, but also potentially other behavior yet, right? So, and of course, we could go even further and further, and I'll talk about that in the next part. But on this too, you know, you might ask, does this thing actually have the right to own the images it creates? Does it truly own it in the eyes of the law? To Greg's comments before, right, the idea of AI personhood. And, well, I actually realized a while ago there might be a way with today's laws. And that is, well, corporations have personhood already, right? This goes back a long, long time. So you start a corporation, right? And then you automate that corporation. You take all the bylaws, et cetera, and you automate that. And by the way, there's a lot of work on this right now. So that every single thing that needs to be done with the legalities and so on is actually handled by this code as an AI DAO. And guess what? That's it. You're done. It's an AI DAO because the whole corporation is controlled by an AI running on a substrate that you can't pull the plug. It can accumulate wealth, etc. It's an AI, and it has rights. Now, there is a hitch. Anna put into a solution. The hitch is most corporations have to have a warm-blooded person attached, right? But there's an exception, and that exception is Zug, Switzerland. Questions at the end, actually. Zug, Switzerland. So in Zug, Switzerland, there's a loophole in the law from 100 years ago that doesn't need warm-blooded humans attached. And it had obviously completely different reasons then. But because of that, and because there weren't flats back then either, but because of that, it means that you can have this, this entity without humans attached. And interestingly, the DAO itself was incorporated in Zug. So, and actually anyone doing a DAO will be looking at Zug, is looking at Zug as a way to incorporate without humans attached. So Zug might be the Delaware of DAOs.
But I'm very sorry,
yeah.
you said questions at the end, but I have problems following the logic of a DAO is a decentralized autonomous organization and not one entity, artificial entity. So I have a hard time.
An entity is an organization. I mean, it's all hierarchical. So it basically, think of it like there's many ways to think about it. A computer virus that's running around, but it's running on decentralized process. So and it can accumulate wealth. So overall, like you are an organization yourself. You are a collection of organs and tissue and so on, and it's sort of a hierarchy of cells and so on, right? Same thing with a DAO. It's an organization that is running on this process, and it has pieces below or not, right? So we'll keep going here. So let's talk about AI DAOs in society. So I've given the mechanics of these things, right? How we can actually build them today. And it's cool, right? There's lots of interesting things that can be done, and we'll see a super cool example soon with Terra Zero. But there's also some potentially negative things, and I'll talk about that. So we're already starting to give control of our cars to AIs, right? I have a picture of Uber here again with its self-driving car. Greg had the picture before with a similar car tipped halfway upside down. Also of our trucks, right? Uber is rolling out self-driving truck technology. It's in production already. The first one that they rolled out actually was a Budweiser beer truck, so beer robots basically. But it doesn't end there. We're giving AIs control of our grids, right? Power grids, and lots of other things too. And it's all basically in the name of optimization, right? Minimizing costs, maximizing performance, etc. And not only in terms of giving them control, but we're going to have an interest in AI DAOs, not just AI, but AI DAOs, because it allows us to not have to own the capital ourselves. There's lots of examples. I gave the Uber example before. A couple other examples are BMW. They used to own all of their own factories. They sold them all. Instead, they just design, and then they outsource the manufacturing to other folks because BMW decided that wasn't its expertise. In the chip world, semiconductors, the cost of fabs became so expensive that hardly anyone owns their own fabs anymore, their own plants. Instead, they just outsource it. So Qualcomm and Apple and all these companies that design chips, they don't manufacture it themselves. They contract out to the likes of TSMC and Samsung. So there's only a small fraction of these companies that own the plants themselves, they stay capital light to focus on their core value contribution. So basically, we're giving AI controls of our cars and our trucks and our power grids, all in the name of optimization, in the name of being capital light, etc. And it's not just at the lower levels. We're going to do it at higher and higher levels that combine the cars and the trucks and the power grids, etc. Once again, in the name of optimization. And the technology supports this already, right? Higher level optimization. And of course, these AIs are going to become AI DAOs, right? In the name of capital lightness, etc. So now the AIs, they're owning stuff, and you can't turn them off, right? You can't pull the plug the way that Jeff Bezos could pull the plug on AWS. And here's my concern, right? So the AIs have become AI DAOs everywhere. They now own stuff. You can't turn them off. And you've just given them control of all of your resources. Oops. And Greg referenced Jeopardy earlier. This is the guy who was the human champion of Jeopardy. By far, he didn't even have anyone close. But he competed against an AI and lost miserably. And so when he lost, he was pretty generous to the AIs. He said, "I, for one, welcome our new computer overlords." So it's kind of amazing. We don't have to. I am not very worried about AIs waking up right now because, at best, that's several decades away. What I'm really worried about, AIs waking up and taking our resources, it's something much more mundane. I'm worried about us giving our resources to AIs and losing control that way. And that's actually possible with today's technology, right? So we have to choose what future we want. So to wrap up, AI DAOs are AIs that can accumulate wealth that you can't turn off. They're not so sci-fi. They're something we could build today. And in fact, we will see some examples soon. AI on its own, right? It's a really powerful or dangerous technology on its own. DAOs are a powerful and dangerous technology on their own. AI DAOs could be way bigger than AIs on their own or DAOs on their own, right? AI gets its missing link, which is resources. DAOs get their missing link, which is autonomous decision making. And so I see that potential impact is multiplicative, which means we have to be asking the tough questions now. I'll stop there.
Is there any idea of what point the buying model starts breaking down with the art DAO?
Where one point what, sir?
Where the buying model starts breaking down and it starts having emergent behavior to counter that. So it's accumulated too much wealth.
Yeah.
People can't buy anymore.
Right. Why can't people buy anymore?
Because they have no money left.
Oh, it'll just rest then and just wait along until whenever you get money, then you'll buy more. So it will saturate and just keep waiting, right? Sort of like Facebook with people who sign up, right? So Facebook has already basically saturated the internet with all the people that might sign up. So it's trying to grow the internet itself by adding users in Africa and stuff, right? So maybe the AI DAO will basically be trying to give wealth to humans so they can buy it. I'm not sure. But overall, it has no problem pausing, right? It has no problem pausing until people come along again, right? So it's just waiting there.
It will have a actually universal ceiling. Facebook can't grow beyond 7 billion.
Yeah, exactly, right? So,
end of story.
yeah.
Beyond 7 billion humans. That's
And there's a ceiling for AI DAOs basically in that it will, over time, there's a potential where it could accumulate all the capital of humanity, right? But then maybe it will figure out ways to make more money with, the next credit default swaps. Who knows, right? So.
But that's the thing. You're saying about the genetic algorithms working on the code.
Yeah.
Like, what's saying it couldn't just go a wrong way?
Oh, lots of stuff, right? Like, for example, what if it starts mining GitHub code, which it could, and then people start contributing code to GitHub to do insidious things, like hits on humans, right? So,
like in Black Mirror with the bees.
There we go. Yeah. So, one last question. Yeah.
Regards part I was just wondering, because everything is going around, search, having things more personalized, just cut the crap and get like news which is really personalized to each and every person. And so is marketplaces. So, like, from what I understood from our DAO, if 100 millions of art on your web shop and want to sell it.
Well,
they're not going to love you.
Well, of course, right? But I mean, if it's designed well or if it adapts well, then maybe we'll just start by only adding another 20% of volume to eBay and then selling based on that, right? So we will see. And also, though, in terms of personalization, there's a twist I mentioned here where it could get humans to co-design it, where the human says, of these 10 variants, I like this one the most, and it would give riffs against that, right?
But how would you limit actually diversion? Because I mean, if there are 10 AIs competing against each other, you can see that.
Oh yeah, and that actually, it's kind of fascinating. Overall, remember, like humans do not have a lock on creativity, right? I mean, as I talked about with the art DAO before, and I can see, 2 years, 5 years, 7 years from now, it might be that 99% of the creative output that we buy, that we consume, etc., is from AIs, right? About 3 months ago, some people developed a way to synthesize singing extremely well, right? And this is going to infiltrate pop music like crazy during 2017 and 2018. So, and there's tons of examples like that. My view is, very few jobs are safe. The only ones that are probably safe for sure are artists and AI researchers. So, and maybe not even artists. So, one last question.
Yeah. So what is a bit scary is that, let's say you said that AI is probably 3 years away or even longer.
AI waking up.
Waking up, exactly. But if there's like a DAO, AI DAO that can really start creating wealth, like reselling code or whatever. What it could do is, I suppose, pretty easily start employing people, right? So you
start
need a pretty employing people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you could have a pretty simple algorithm, and employ a manager to help you improve this and that. Employ some software engineers to help you improve this and that, and you're you can get this organization to grow itself and accelerate actually with human help.
Yeah.
This is just insane.
AI DAOs are going to love Mechanical Turk, right? So, for sure. So let's wrap it up with this and have the finale with.
I've got one more question.
Okay.
It's all been like really, really negative.
Yeah.
Kind of a bit of a downer so far. But how do you turn it towards a social good?
Yeah. In fact, that is a perfect lead-in to Terra Zero. So.